So I figured with the launch of Capture One version 12, today would be a good time to go over how I set up a new installation of Capture One. Capture One's a program where it's really important that you set it up the way that works best for you and really take advantage of the interface in a way that makes sense to how you do things. It's something where I really find it's an advantage over other software because you can really make the interface work for you and really only use the tools that are most important to you. That said, off the bat, it can be a little confusing. So I like to kind of show you guys what I do in order to get a new installation going. Before we move on, just want to say if you are looking at either purchasing a license or upgrading your current license, you can save 10% off of that, whatever it is. You can also get a discount on the subscription model, which if you do use the subscription, what that does is you'll always be on the latest version. And this is similar to kind of how Adobe does its Creative Cloud. Otherwise, you can get a perpetual license or pay for an upgrade. And the code is going to be AMBSTARR. So let's, let's pop over to Capture One. So this is how it's going to look right off the default here. First thing I like to do is I'm going to pop my, switch my tools in my browser window. Way I'm going to do that is take my browser and I'm going to click place browser below. That's one thing I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to take my tools window and we're going to place that on the right. I will say that this is an all new menu system. So I'm actually just learning it. So it's going to take me a little longer to find where everything is. What's amazing is it's confusing to people who've used it before, but in reality, what they did was made this way easier to find things. They organize things in a way that makes a lot more sense. So I think for new users, especially, you're going to find this new menu system makes a lot of sense. So, we've got our tools on the right and we've got our browser down below here. Let's see. First thing I want to do here, let's go into our preferences on a Mac. It's going to be under the Capture One menu here. Be a little different under a PC on Windows. And want to make sure under hardware acceleration that these are both set to auto. Should automatically be set that way. And what it will do the first time you run Capture One is it's going to set up hardware acceleration. This may take like a few minutes. And what that'll do is once that's run, it figures out the best way to take advantage of your particular hardware, your graphics cards, whatever hardware you have there. So also the Resource Hub is pretty awesome. It will show on startup and offers a lot of tutorials and other good resources for you, but you can turn that off if you don't want that popping up every time. So that is one thing I will disable for me personally. I always like to make sure the zoom with scroll wheel is selected here because it's a really nice way to zoom in and out. So moving on to our appearance here. I'm just kind of go through these. One thing I like to do is change my mask color. This is an awesome feature of Capture One. And say you work on a lot of red photos with a lot of red in them. Well, you don't want your mask color to be red. So I like to make it a color that's pretty unusual to see in nature. So I use a kind of crazy magenta. What this does is, I'll show you this later, but when we're masking, it's going to actually use that cool feature. You can customize that however you'd like. Important thing here in the image tab. You want to set your preview image size to whatever the width of your resolution of your screen. By doing that, once previews are built, you'll never have to worry about it regenerating previews because you're always already going to have the right size. One way to find that out is to take a screenshot of your screen and then use the measure tool in Photoshop to get the width. I'm pretty sure on this 2880 is fine. I can't really remember and it's not worth dealing with it right now, but just wanted to show you that. So then I'm just going to move through here quickly until we get to the exposure section. One thing I like to do here, you can actually change your exposure or highlight warning. You can change this to any value between 155 and 255. 255 is completely blown, absolutely no data left. I actually use this as a way of looking at skin tones. So typically in skin tones, if you're blowing around 235 to 233 on Caucasian skin is somewhere around where you have nice, bright, healthy looking skin. So I put that there because it gives me a really quick way to set my exposure based on skin tones. I'm also going to throw the shadow warning here, and I'm just going to put that to about 3 here because that shows me when we're looking at true blacks, and I kind of have an idea when I use that shortcut to know what the black levels are like. This is also an important one here. I use the auto levels tool a lot in Capture One because it's an amazing way to automatically get rid of color cast. Important thing about that though is you've got to change this channel mode here to red, green, and blue channels. That's going to allow that to work better. You can even set those target levels, and there's a lot of ways to adjust that and fine tune that. The crop tool. Again, this you can show, so you can change the opacity so it shows it either like cuts out all of the image that's not being cropped, or shows more of it and just shows you the window. So you can change that. I like to have it a little darker so I can't see. Actually, so I drop it this way so you can see less of it. And there's some really good options to play around with here to get some ideas. The focus tool. This one's going to be important for if you use the focus tool here. What this does is showing you with a quick click of a button, you can see what is sharp, and it's a good estimate, a quick idea to see if something's not sharp. Like if you're shooting portraits and you can tell that it's back focused if the eyes or the front of the face aren't showing up in the focus tool yet like the back of the hair is. The threshold, what that's going to do, the higher this number, the more sharp it has to be for the system to show that it is actually sharp and in focus. So I like to actually bump this up a little bit because then I have a better idea of sharpness there. So let's go close that out. So we've gotten that done. A couple things I like to do here is adjust my toolbar. Click Customize Toolbar. And what we're going to drop onto here is I'm going to find that focus tool that I just talked about. And actually, unless it's already on there, sometimes by default they have that in there. Focus mask. So that's going to be this one right here. And all you do is drag this in. I like to put it over here. And you can also take out tools that you don't use, which is, again, really cool. Again, it's customizable for whatever you do, which is a nice thing of this tool here. The default set is going to be up there. And you can actually do icon and text, and this will show you what that tool is in case you don't know what it is based on the icon, which I think is really important if you are just learning the software to have that switch to icon and text. But I'm going to go back to icon because I know what these are at this point. So we're closing that out there. So the basic organization here, these are our tool tabs. And what these are is they're ways of organizing the tools you use into different types of tasks. I like to have these set up in a way that makes most sense for the system I'm using. One thing to keep in mind is that if you are using this machine for tethering, if it's your laptop or a desktop that you're using for tethered shooting, you're going to want to have different tools than if it's your desktop workstation that you never tether with. So if this was a desktop, I would remove the camera capture tool because this one is really just for tethered shooting. All you have to do to remove a tool, right click on it, and you can remove that tool tab. So I could pull off the capture tab if I wanted here, but I'm going to keep that on there for now. What I am going to do is add a tool tab. I'm going to add the quick tool tab right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reorder this, and all I have to do is hold Command and drag this. I like to drag that towards the front here because it's going to be my most used tool. The other thing, the way I like to organize it, we've got our library up front here, quick tool tab, got the capture tool here, and I'm just going through these: lens, color, exposure, details, adjustments toolbar, metadata, and then our output tools. So I'm going to go to the quick tool tab here, and the histogram is important, but what I actually like to do is there's another way to go about this that's really cool. So I'm going to remove the tools that I don't want in this one. I honestly, base characteristics, I don't adjust very often, so I don't need them in my quick tool tab. I'm going to get rid of that. And this process section, I don't need this in here. All I'm doing here to get rid of a tool tab or of a tool is clicking on the three little dots and clicking remove tool. What I am going to add, so I'm going to add levels. I'm going to drag this right up here because all these tools can be dragged around. And again, that goes back to customizing the interface for how you work. So I've got my levels right here. What's really cool is that you could have multiple levels here. So we could do another tool that is going to be, if we wanted to have our red levels and then another one that was green levels and so on and so forth. So I clicked library there. I'm just going to remove that. I just wanted to show you that because it gives you an idea of how customizable you can get that. But I'm just going to leave the levels tool. I use the level tool because it has a histogram and it does levels. I don't need my histogram and levels tools at the same time. So we've got our levels tool, we've got our white balance tool, we've got exposure and high dynamic range. Some of the other things I like to put in here, I'm just going to go down this list and put in some things that I like to use on most photos. Got my clarity tool. We're going to go down and I'm going to go down to the, let's see, we've got HDR already set, keystone keywords, levels, and sharpening, spot removal, and vignetting. So those are pretty common tools for me to use on most levels. I bring my sharpening up. I like to have my sharpening towards the top here. And really, you can organize this whatever way works best for you. Again, a lot of people like to just, if you're starting out moving from Lightroom, good way to do this is kind of just, you can adjust this and make it basically the exact way you use Lightroom. If you wanted to, you could put the color editor tool in here and that would give you that similar, how you have the HSL sliders. The color editor we're not going to go into right now, but it's way more advanced than the Lightroom one, but it accomplishes similar things. But I'm going to take that out of there because it's not something I use on every photo. So now that I've got my quick tab done, basically this allows me to get most of the things I want done all in one tab here. Next thing we're going to do is I want to look at, you know what? And the one other thing I do like to add here is we are going to add our layers tool. So I like to have this up here. I'm going to move it above levels. So the layers tool, because Capture One has layers available, this allows you to see which layer you're working on, which is really good if you're doing some masking. I'm just going to collapse that for now, but it's nice to have on this quick tool tab. So that's kind of the basic setup of how I make sure that I have like the tools that I want always going right there. Next thing I'm going to do, a really cool thing is you can add floating tool tabs. Tools. And what that means is that you could take one of these and drag it out and you can quickly have a floating tool. And there's various reasons you do this. So I often actually have the curves tool on here and you may want to work on, you know, the red channel, but you want it near the photo you're working on. So you can just pull this out here, have it there and have a floating tool tab. So that's a cool thing to keep in mind. However, what I want to show you is if you have a bigger screen, so if you're working on a desktop or you have a really large laptop screen, I like to have my presets all available no matter what I'm doing without having to go to a specified tool tab or pulling up a tool in here. What I could do, so let's say this is a laptop and you don't have a lot of space, what I would do is pull in your presets here, which is going to be, so the name for presets is going to be styles and presets. In Capture One, styles are similar to Lightroom's presets, and presets are going to be for individual tools. Each tool has its own set of presets. You know, so there may be, you can make a vignetting preset specifically. You can make a clarity preset specifically, and that just affects that tool. Styles are going to affect multiple tools all at once. So those are more similar to the presets you see in Lightroom. So if you're working on a smaller screen and say you want to use have your presets available in this base window, here's a good place. You can put it up top and you can collapse it when you're not working on it. But this is going to have all your different styles available, presets, and as you roll over these will show up live edited to the photo. What I like to do, though, on a bigger screen is I'm going to adjust this window here, move this over, pull out my styles and presets tool, and then I'm going to line this up here. And I typically have a lot. I actually haven't installed my presets in this one yet, so you can't tell yet, but I typically have a bunch of styles and presets set up. So I like to have them all available on this window at all times. So what I do is I create that floating window, which allows me to quickly see all my presets and roll over them and continue working on my photo and bounce back and forth between presets and my tool tabs here. So really, those are some of the most basic things. I do want to go into one other thing before we get going here. Sorry, I should have made a list before this, but I'm kind of just freewheeling here. One thing that I find really important is the ability to switch. A lot of people coming from Lightroom are missing the grid, which you hit the G key and it brings up the thumbnail grid. The way to get to that is actually going to be the show hide viewer shortcut here. So by showing and hiding the viewer, it's going to open up the thumbnails in the browser as the full window. I actually like to set this to something easier here. I'm going to duplicate these. Let's see, Jesse, shortcuts. So you have to duplicate the default, so you always have the default available. And then I'm going to click. You can now search. This is a new feature, actually, which is awesome. You can search for keyboard shortcuts here. I'm going to pull up under View, and we've got Show Hide Viewer. The default is Shift Command V. I actually like to use the tilde key for that. So I type in tilde, hit Enter. It's not used for anything else, so it doesn't really matter. And by doing that, now when I hit tilde, this is silly for me to show because you can't see the photo because I don't have any photos in here right now loaded up. But this would normally have a photo in it, and this would have your browser in it. So this would be your grid, and you could zoom in and out the size of the thumbnails. So that's a really important keyboard shortcut to go into that I think will really help you. So from then on, you can use that. If you're really stuck with the Lightroom ways of doing things, you could use the G key for that if you're used to that being your grid. But I just happen to use the tilde because it's a good one that works for me. Those are my basic setup for getting started with Capture One and getting the layout to work for you. I suggest diving into all of the tool tabs and really finding the ones, playing around and looking at the default ones, and then going in and seeing, which ones do I use more often? Which ones, if I add a tool or is there something I see in here that I want to play around with? Maybe it's something I want to put in my quick tool tab because it's something I use a lot. But take a look, see how they all work. One thing I also tend to do is on my my color tool tab, which I do use a lot, I like to also add a layers tool to it. Sorry, it's already there. It's hard to see when there's nothing filled out here because I'm not working on photos since this is open from scratch. But we've got the layers tool in here, and you can add that to different tabs so that you can work on different layers. And that's really helps you keep track of what you're doing in there and work on masking. So that is all I got for you today. Let me know in the comments if you got any questions. Please subscribe. And like I said, if you're looking to get a upgrade or purchase, please use our coupon code here, AMB Star, and that'll get you a nice little discount there and a savings. Thanks, guys, and let me know if you have